Step away from the canvas, right now. The blade was still in Chloe Mitchell's hand. The varnish was still wet. And the number she just scraped out of a 19th century portrait columns of coded names dates dollar amounts, buried under 200 years of paint, were staring back at her like a dead man's confession. She had 1 second to decide. She grabbed the canvas, rolled it against her chest, and ran. Not because she was trained for this, because in that one breathless second, she understood what she'd found inside a painting nobody wanted wasn't history. It was evidence, the kind that got people killed. And someone had just walked through a locked door to make sure it never left the room. If this story gets to you, subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this goes. Chloe Mitchell had a rule about her work: never get attached to the art. It wasn't coldness, it was survival. Attachment made you careless. Carelessness destroyed things that couldn't be brought back. She had learned that 11 years ago, not in a conservation lab, but in a courtroom watching her father's face go still when the verdict came down. Arthur Mitchell, honest, methodical, careful. Arthur Mitchell, who had spent his whole career doing everything right, had been led away in handcuffs for crimes someone else committed, and the truth had been buried so deep and so skillfully that no one had been able to find it since. So Chloe worked on paintings instead of people. Paintings didn't betray you. They held their secrets at a fixed depth, and if you were patient enough, skilled enough, willing to look closely enough, they gave them up. The portrait arrived on a Tuesday. Museum director Hargrove brought it himself, which should have been a signal, because Hargrove never personally carried anything that didn't have political weight attached to it. He set it on her work table and gave her the thin story Bentley estate donation, 19th century, possibly regional portraiture. Probably not worth displaying, just needs documentation and stabilization. She looked at it the way she looked at everything from the surface inward. A man, heavy coat, the kind of face that had spent its whole life making decisions other people paid for. Varnish thick and yellow, undisturbed for decades. "I'll start this week," she said. Hargrove left. She put on her gloves and got to work. For 3 days, the painting gave her exactly what she expected. Steady, satisfying restoration work, the kind that asked nothing of her except precision and patience. The varnish lifted in thin, translucent sheets. The man's coat deepened into genuine black. His eyes found dimension. The background revealed itself, paneling curtains, a room with history pressed into every corner. On the 4th day, she found the numbers. She almost missed them. They were painted directly onto the canvas in a pale, thin wash, not part of the portrait, but sandwiched beneath the finished surface between the ground and the first paint layer. Alphanumeric sequences, tight columns, dates, initials, dollar amounts arranged with the precision of someone who knew exactly what they were recording and why it needed to be hidden. This wasn't artistic notation. This was a ledger, and someone had buried it inside a painting because they were desperate and running out of time and had no better place to put the truth. Chloe sat very still for 10 seconds. Then she reached for her camera. The door opened. The footsteps were wrong, too heavy, too deliberate. She looked up. A man she'd never seen stood in the doorway of her lab, wearing a jacket that cost more than her rent, with his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the painting, like someone checking on an investment. "Dr. Mitchell," he said, "we need to talk about what you found." "The museum is closed to non-staff," she said. Her hand moved slowly toward her phone. "How did you get in side entrance?" He said it like locked doors were someone else's problem. "Step away from the canvas." She didn't step away. What she did instead, and she would spend a long time afterward unable to fully explain it, was grab the painting off the table, roll it fast along its axis the way she'd been trained never to do with fragile canvas, and press it under her arm. Then she ran. Not gracefully, not like someone in a movie, like a woman who was genuinely terrified and running out of time, through the back corridor, past the storage units, through the emergency exit that she had always assumed was just a formality. She hit the door with her shoulder and burst into the alley. Behind her, the man shouted something to someone she hadn't seen. 2 of them. She ran harder. The alley connected to a loading dock. The loading dock connected to a side street. She ran down that side street with a 19th century portrait under her arm and the absolute certainty that she had just done something she couldn't undo. She ducked into a laundromat doorway and pressed herself against the wall and watched the alley. One man appeared, looked both ways, jogged north. She counted to 60. The street settled. She pulled out her phone. It buzzed before she could dial. Unknown number. She didn't answer. It buzzed again. 3 times. On the 4th, she picked up. Good. The voice was low and smooth Chicago flat with something European underneath it. You ran. That was the right call. Chloe's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this someone who isn't chasing you? The voice said, which given the evening you're having should mean something. How do you have this number? I have a great many things, Dr. Mitchell. What I don't have yet, and the painting. But I understand you do. The canvas was still under her arm. She was gripping it hard enough to hurt. I don't know what's in this painting. You do, the voice said with the quiet certainty of someone who had already done the math. You've had it for 4 days. You know exactly what's in it. What you don't know is what it means. That's the conversation I'd like to have. I'm calling the police. A pause. Brief. Surgical. Your father's name is Arthur Mitchell. He's in his 11th year at Stateville. Financial fraud conspiracy. He's maintained his innocence since the first day. Another pause. What you found in that painting is the ledger that proves he was telling the truth. The people who put him away are the same people who just walked through the door of your lab. The world went quiet around her. Who are you? She whispered. My name is Silvio Giardoni, the voice said. And tonight I'm the only person in this city who doesn't want you dead. She met him 20 minutes later in a parking garage on West Monroe because the alternative was standing in a laundromat doorway until the man with the expensive jacket found her again. She kept the painting. She kept her thumb on 911. She told herself the whole 3-block walk that this was a rational decision based on available information. She was lying to herself. She was terrified, and the mention of her father's name had opened something in her chest that she'd spent 11 years learning to keep closed. Silvio Giardoni was not what she expected. She'd built an image from the voice older, harder the face of a man shaped entirely by dark choices. What she found on level 2 of the garage was a man around 45, dark hair silvering at the temples, a suit cut for his specific body standing with his arms crossed, and his expression doing nothing visible at all. He looked at her the way engineers looked at structural problems, not unkindly but without sentiment. You kept the painting, he said. I'm not giving it to you. I didn't ask for it. She stopped 6 feet away. My father, she said. Arthur Mitchell worked as an accountant for Hartfield Logistics for 12 years. Hartfield was a front for money laundering run jointly between my family and the O'Sullivans. He said it like reading a report, factual, clean, no editorializing. Your father found the discrepancies. He reported them. The people he reported to were already on the O'Sullivan payroll. He was framed using forged authorization signatures in a transaction record that was manufactured after the fact. Chloe's jaw locked. The evidence that would have cleared him disappeared before trial. It was a ledger, the original transaction record showing who actually authorized the transfers. He nodded toward the canvas under her arm. Until about 4 days ago. Someone hid it in a painting. A man named Edmund Voss. He was my family's attorney. He hid the ledger in that portrait before he disappeared in 2014. His widow donated the painting to your museum 2 months ago while settling his estate. She didn't know what she had. He paused. You found it because you're exceptionally good at your job. The words landed somewhere complicated inside her. Voss is dead. Yes. How? Silvio's face didn't move. That's part of what tonight is about. She studied him. Why are you telling me this? Your family was part of what put my father in prison. Yes. And you want my cooperation. I want you to survive past midnight, he said. Cooperation is a separate question. That's not good enough. It's all I have right now, and it's more than the O'Sullivans are offering. He held her gaze with the patience of someone who had learned to let people arrive at things at their own speed. Tomorrow night, I'm attending my brother Marco's wedding. The O'Sullivans will be there. So will 3 federal judges with O'Sullivan money in their pockets, one of whom presided over your father's trial. And there will be art at the event. Art being used as collateral in a transaction that closes at midnight. She already knew where this was going, and it still hit her sideways. You want me to look at the art? I need someone who can walk through that room and tell me without causing a scene which pieces are real and which are forgeries. As your date. As my conservator in a social setting, he said precisely. The date element is cover. Chloe laughed. It came out edged with something that wasn't quite humor. You're asking me to go as your date to your brother's wedding surrounded by the people who destroyed my father's life. I'm asking you to make a rational calculation about your survival, Silvio said. You're not safe on the street tonight. The O'Sullivans know your face. They know what you found. Nowhere is safe until the balance shifts, and it shifts tomorrow night, or it doesn't shift at all. She looked at the canvas under her arm. 11 years. 11 years of visiting rooms and appeals, and her father's voice staying steady when hers wouldn't, telling her the truth was out there somewhere. 11 years of nodding and saying yes, she believed him, and privately in the darkest hours, not quite believing enough. My father's name, she said, if that ledger is what you say it is, appeal, exoneration, the full record corrected. He said it the way he said everything, without ornamentation, with complete conviction, but only if it reaches the right hands. And right now, you and I and the O'Sullivans are the only people who know it exists. She looked at him for a long moment. She filed things away the way she always filed things, the quality of his certainty, the specific gravity of his voice when he mentioned Voss, the way his hands had stayed completely still through the entire conversation. A man who had learned long ago that stillness was the truest form of control. I need clothes for a wedding, she said. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, the suggestion of one. That I can arrange. She didn't sleep. She lay in the guest room of a North Shore townhouse that belonged to Silvio through a chain of holding companies, and stared at the ceiling and thought about Edmund Voss, a man scared enough to hide a document inside a painting, smart enough to choose a canvas nobody would look at for years, unlucky enough to run out of time before it mattered. She thought about her father learning to be still inside a place designed to take stillness away from you. At 5 a.m, she got up and opened the photos she'd taken of the ledger. Before she'd run from the museum, spread them across the desk and started working. She treated it the way she treated every restoration problem, methodically, layer by layer, without rushing toward conclusions her evidence didn't yet support. By 6:30, she had matched 7 entries to transactions she recognized from her father's trial records from 11 years of visiting room research she'd been doing with no plan, except not giving up. By 7, she understood what the ledger actually was. Not just financial fraud, a documented infrastructure of laundered money running through Chicago's port system, with names attached in 3 entries bearing the signature of a circuit court judge named Harlan Breeze. Judge Breeze, who had ruled against every defense motion her father's lawyer filed. Chloe sat back and pressed her hands flat on the desk until they stopped shaking. Silvio knocked at 8. She opened the door before he could knock twice. She was dressed. Her notepad was in her hand. She said Judge Harlan Breeze before he could speak. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. He offered her one. What about him? His initials appear 7 times. His signature appears 3 times. He presided over my father's trial. She watched his face. Did you know? I knew he was connected to the O'Sullivans, Silvio said, not the specifics of the documentation. He stepped back slightly. May I come in? She moved aside. He came in, looked at the desk, the photographs the notepad covered in her handwriting, the timeline she'd constructed, and looked at her. You worked all night, he said. I don't sleep well when people want me dead, she said. The signatures on the transfer authorizations were forged. The dates don't match my father's documented schedule. He was on leave when 2 of those transfers were supposedly authorized. He was in the hospital with me when the 3rd one went through. I was having my appendix out. He was in the waiting room. She said it flat, matter of fact. She did not let it break her voice. She had been practicing that particular piece of control for 11 years. Silvio set down his coffee very carefully. Who else knows this, he said. No one, just you. He nodded. At the wedding tonight, there will be a man named Franklin Cole, assistant U.S. attorney. He'll be attending as an O'Sullivan guest, which tells you everything about his situation. But Cole has a history with Breeze that goes back 8 years. He's never moved up in the federal system despite his record. He's been waiting. He held her gaze. I think you just gave him what he's been waiting for. Chloe looked at him. She saw the whole structure of it, not a wedding, not even a transaction. A detonation, carefully, patiently assembled over 8 years by a man who had lost his friend and decided that the only way to honor that loss was to finish what his friend had started. She was the last piece, the one that had walked into his orbit by accident through a painting no one wanted and a job she was exceptionally good at. She picked up her coffee. Cold. She drank it anyway. Tell me about the art, she said. Silvio produced a folded event program. On the back, a handwritten list. 6 pieces displayed at the venue. She read through them. Got to the 5th entry and her hand went still. Raphael, portrait of a young man, authenticated, insured for $14 million. Primary collateral in a transaction closing at midnight. Is it real? He said. She read the provenance notes, the dimensions, the authentication summary. No, she said. He nodded. I thought so. How much of the transaction depends on this piece? It's the anchor. Pull that value and the whole package collapses below threshold. What's the transaction financing? He looked at her steadily. A private security operation. The kind that doesn't stop at financial crime. She absorbed that, set down the program, looked at this strange, dangerous, infuriating man sitting across from her in a safe house on a Thursday morning, and thought about what it meant that she was about to put on a borrowed dress and walk into a room full of people who wanted her gone, because the alternative was letting her father stay in a room that wasn't his for another year, another 5 years, until time finished what the verdict had started. What time do we leave? She said. 6 o'clock. Then I need 3 hours of sleep, she said. And whatever dress Petra brought needs to have pockets. The almost smile again. Quicker this time. Gone before she could be sure she'd seen it. She was starting to understand that was how he let things through briefly, carefully, like he'd learned that the door could only be open for a second before something got in that he hadn't planned for. She went to sleep. She dreamed about paintings. She dreamed about her father's hands, which had always been steady even when everything around them wasn't. When she woke up 3 hours later, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Ready. The dress had pockets. That was the first thing she checked. The second thing she checked was the earpiece Silvio handed her at the bottom of the stairs, small, skin-colored, the kind of thing you only noticed if you knew to look. He ran through the signals without preamble. 2 presses on the left earring brought Luca in from the parking structure. 1 press meant abort, and abort meant the car came around to the south exit, whether she was in it or not. What if I press once and I'm still inside? She asked. Then you run toward the kitchen, he said, not the lobby. The lobby has O'Sullivan people at both exits. Chloe put the earpiece in. The Raphael, where will it be during the reception? East wall main room. Around 11, it moves to the private viewing area behind the bar. That's where the transaction closes at midnight. He straightened his jacket with the economy of someone who had been doing this kind of preparation his whole adult life. Franklin Cole arrives at 7 with the O'Sullivan delegation. Head table, don't approach him directly. Let me read the room first. And Marco. Silvio's jaw tightened. 1 degree. She was getting good at reading 1 degree. Marco will know who you are the moment he sees you. He despises anyone connected to anything that threatens the family. But he values appearances more than he values being right in public. At his own wedding in front of 60 guests, his hands are tied. You're betting on that. I'm betting on knowing my brother, he said. I've had 45 years of data. She looked at him. And Petra. The name landed and his face did something brief and controlled. Petra arranged the dress, the car, and the safe house. She knows the outline of tonight. She doesn't know about Cole. He was quiet for a second. Let's keep it that way. She'd heard what was underneath that sentence. She let it sit. The car ride was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Chicago moved past the windows in the dark, the deep, familiar dark of a city that held everything and explained nothing. Chloe ran through what she knew about the Raphael forgery circuit, Eastern European origin, moving through auction houses with manufactured provenance documents. The tell was always in the pigment, in the ground, but you couldn't do a chemical analysis at a wedding. What you could do was look, really look. She'd spent 15 years training herself to see what others walked past. Tonight, that skill was the only weapon she had. Tell me something, she said. Ask. Voss, what was he actually trying to do before he died? Silvio was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. He believed the whole structure could be dismantled without destroying the people inside it. The legitimate businesses, the property, holdings, the things my father actually built before it all went wrong. He thought you could separate them. A pause. He was building the case that would allow that to happen. The ledger was only part of it. And Marco knew. Marco knew Voss was a threat to the O'Sullivan arrangement specifically. The O'Sullivans had been moving into areas my father had explicitly refused weapons trafficking contract operations. Marco was letting them in through the back door. Voss had documented it. His voice was level, precise, the voice of someone who had lived inside this knowledge for 8 years and learned to carry it without letting it show. Voss told me about your father before he disappeared. He said if you ever have the chance to fix this, you fix it. That's what I'm doing. Chloe looked at her hands. He sounds like a good man. He was the best man I knew, Silvio said, simply, completely. No embellishment. The car stopped. The venue was a private Gold Coast club with no sign out front. Petra materialized at Chloe's door. Silvio moved to her side with his hand light at the small of her back, not possessive. Just present, a signal of alignment, and they walked through the entrance together. The room hit her like a weather change. Not the decor, the density of it. The weight of every person in that space, the invisible architecture of power and threat running underneath the flowers and the music and the champagne. She'd felt something similar, standing in a storage room full of unpacked acquisitions, the sense of things that hadn't been examined yet, pressure in every corner. Breathe, Silvio said. I am breathing. Slower. A man, detached from the crowd, early 40s dark hair, Silvio's nose, nothing else matching. He had a politician's smile and a financier's eyes and a champagne glass in each hand. Marco Giardoni on his wedding night looked at his brother and at Chloe with the identical pleasant expression, which told her he'd already been briefed and had decided how to play it. Brother, Marco said, you actually came. It's your wedding, Silvio said. He accepted a glass. He didn't offer one to Chloe. She read that correctly. She was a detail he was managing, not a guest he was hosting. Fine. She used the invisibility. Marco turned to her. And this is Chloe, Silvio said. Just the name. Chloe. Marco extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was calibrated, not aggressive, not warm, but informational. The grip of a man taking a reading. She kept her hands steady and her face open and met his eyes without flinching. Congratulations on your wedding, she said. Marco smiled the real smile, then not the political one. The one underneath it, which was colder and more interested. Thank you, he said. Enjoy the evening. He melted back into the crowd. Chloe exhaled. He knows. Yes, Silvio said. How much does he know? That you're Arthur Mitchell's daughter, that you found something in the painting, not the full scope of the ledger. He touched her elbow. A direction. East wall. They moved through the room. She let him handle the social navigation while she worked cataloging, assessing, filing. Everything she saw with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd spent 15 years looking at things other people missed. 4 pieces on the east wall. 3 she dismissed in seconds, competent work, no particular significance. The 4th she stopped in front of and felt her body go quiet. The Raphael, or rather not the Raphael. She looked at it the way she looked at everything she needed to understand from the surface. Inward reading what was visible as a guide to what was underneath. The composition was correct. The subject was correct. The quality of Raphael's light, that particular grace of illumination, shadow pooling under the jaw, the specific warmth of the flesh tones, was reproduced with genuine skill. But the ground was wrong. Not wrong in a way she could describe in a single sentence. Wrong in the way you felt wrong when you'd spent 15 years with Renaissance work, a modern smoothness beneath a historical surface paint that sat slightly differently than paint laid down in the 16th century. And the craquelure, the network of fine cracks that developed over centuries of temperature, change, and humidity and time was too regular. Natural craquelure was chaotic. It responded to every variable of a painting's specific history. This was induced, chemically aged, done with exceptional skill. Done. Not made. That was the difference. Forgery, she said quietly, certain completely. The authentication house is Meridian Fine Art, New York. Meridian had an internal review in 2019 that disappeared. She kept her voice light conversational, 2 people at a party talking about art. If the O'Sullivans have been running work through them, the transaction is $14 million against this piece as primary anchor, Silvio said. Pull its authentication and the package falls below threshold. The whole deal collapses. For a mercenary operation, she said. Yes. She turned slightly from the painting as if she'd finished looking, took a sip of water. Her hand was completely steady, which surprised her. I need to put my professional assessment in writing, with my credentials attached. Your signature can come from Cole. Business Center, second floor. He checked his watch. I'd planned to wait until dinner service. Give Cole time to separate from the O'Sullivan people. We don't have time to wait, she said. Declan is here. He'd seen it at the same moment she said it. Declan O'Sullivan at the entrance, scanning the room with the unhurried precision of someone who had arrived with a purpose he hadn't been invited to announce. He wasn't on the guest list, Silvio said. Marco invited him this afternoon, Chloe said. Not a question. Yes, his voice had gone very quiet. Which means Marco called him after this morning. Which means Marco knows more than we thought, she said. How much more? Silvio scanned the room in one sweep. Declan, the men at the exits who hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. Marco across the room, no longer at the head table but standing watching. He knows about the painting and the ledger. He may know about the forgery. He looked at her. He doesn't know about Cole. Cole was decided this morning after Petra left the room. Then Cole is still our move, she said, and we go now. She was already moving. Cole was at the bar, separated from his O'Sullivan handlers by 6 feet of crowd. He was holding a drink he wasn't drinking. His posture was the specific posture of a man who had spent years trying to look comfortable with a decision he'd never fully made. She read him in the time it took to cross the room, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes moved between the exits without appearing to the particular quality of someone who had been calculating costs for so long, the calculation had become the whole of him. He wanted out. He'd wanted out for years. He just hadn't found a reason that outweighed the cost. She was about to hand him one. She reached him 3 steps ahead of Silvio. One of the O'Sullivan men, thick-necked, watchful, shifted at her approach. Silvio stepped between them with the casual authority of a man in his own house, and the shift became stillness. Mr. Cole, Chloe said. She extended her hand, museum smile, donor event voice. My name is Chloe Mitchell. My father is Arthur Mitchell, and I have something I think you've been waiting 8 years for someone to show you. Cole's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. The music kept playing, the conversations kept moving, and Franklin Cole, assistant U.S. attorney, looked at Chloe Mitchell over the rim of a drink he'd never intended to finish, and understood that the moment he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal and private measure had just walked up to him and introduced itself. Cole did not move for 3 full seconds. One of the O'Sullivan men, a wide-shouldered man named Brower, whose entire job was to watch for moments exactly like this one, shifted his weight. Silvio moved first. He stepped to the bar beside Brower with the ease of someone finding a comfortable spot at a crowded party and said pleasantly, "The veal tonight is extraordinary. I'd get back before it's cleared." The tone said this is not a request. Brower hesitated, then left. Cole lowered his glass. "I don't know who you are," he said. He said it precisely carefully, the way lawyers said things they might need to walk back later. "Yes, you do," Chloe said quietly. "You were in the gallery at my father's trial, 3rd row left side. You watched the whole thing." Cole's jaw tightened, said nothing. She pulled out her phone, opened the photographs, held it out. Cole looked at the screen. She watched his face move through recognition, then comprehension, then the specific expression of a man stepping off something he'd been balanced on too long. He scrolled slowly, stopped at the 3rd photograph, looked up. "Where did you get this?" he said. "My father has been in Stateville for 11 years, she said. "He didn't do it. Those are the original transaction authorizations. Those are forged signatures. And that is Judge Harlan Breeze, whose signature appears 3 times in the same ledger dated during the active investigation." She held his gaze. "You know Breeze. You've always known Breeze." Something broke open in Cole's face. Not dramatically. The way old plaster breaks quiet, irrevocable, long overdue. "If I take this, you'll be burning a bridge," Chloe said. "I know, but the bridge is already on fire. You're in this room tonight. You know what closes at midnight. In 18 months, when this investigation opens, how does it look that you were in the building?" Cole said nothing. "Arthur Mitchell is 63 years old, Chloe said, and this time she let the weight fully into her voice. Not as a tactic, as a fact. He's been inside for 11 years for something he didn't do, and he has never not once stopped believing the truth was findable. I need you to be the thing you were supposed to be when you passed the bar." Silence. A long one. "Oh. There's also a forged Raphael on the east wall," Silvio said. Primary collateral in tonight's transaction. I have a professional authentication report ready to sign. Cole looked between them. His expression settled into something she hadn't seen from him all evening: decision. Simple, final, the look of a man who had finished calculating. The authentication report, he said. Written, signed, your credentials attached. Business center, second floor, Silvio said. 40 minutes. 30 time, Cole said. I don't think you have 40. His eyes moved across the room to where Declan had positioned himself near the east wall. He's already looking at the painting. They moved. The business center was spare and institutional. Chloe sat down, pulled up a blank document, and wrote the way she wrote every professional assessment: specific, credentialed, methodical. She cited her degrees, her institutional affiliation, her 15 years of documented restoration work. Then she described the forgery with the same clinical precision, ground preparation, inconsistency, craquelure induction methodology, pigment layering at the compositional margins. She named the forgery technique, cited comparable documented cases, gave it a clear verdict. 8 minutes. She printed 2 copies, signed both, handed one to Silvio. He read it in under a minute. This holds up. In a courtroom with a physical piece, it's airtight, she said. As a standalone document, it opens the door. She was already moving toward the stairs. Cole is still at his table. We have a window. 11 minutes before dinner, service ends, Silvio said. Then we use them. Then they came back down into a room that had shifted. Subtle, not visible to someone who wasn't watching, but the quality of attention had changed. 3 men near the exits who hadn't been there before. Declan at the bar now in a conversation that looked casual and wasn't. Marco standing not seated, watching the room with the stillness of someone waiting for a cue. Don't change your pace, Silvio said. She didn't. Cole saw them coming and made his move before they reached him, smooth, unhurried, excusing himself from the table the way someone did when they'd been rehearsing the excuse for 40 minutes. He met them near a set of curtains at the room's edge. 3 feet of acoustic cover. It would have to be enough. Silvio handed him the folded report. Cole read it twice. His face went through professional calculation, then personal recognition, then something that looked underneath all the training and the years and the careful armor of a man who'd spent too long living with the wrong decision, like relief. Your signature, Cole said, and my license number, my institutional record, my documented methodology. Chloe held his gaze. It'll hold up in any court in this country. The physical piece is on the east wall right now. You can start an informal examination tonight. Formal analysis needs a lab. The preliminary assessment in that report is sufficient for a warrant. Cole folded the paper, put it in his inside pocket. His hand was not entirely steady. If I walk out of here with this, there's no quiet version of what comes next. No, Silvio said. The O'Sullivans will know it was me. They'll know it was all 3 of us, Chloe said. That's the point. This isn't a quiet tip. This is a documented chain from a credentialed expert delivered to a federal prosecutor at a public event with 60 witnesses. They cannot make it disappear. Too many people already know it exists. Cole looked at her. You thought this through. My father taught me to think clearly, she said. He had a lot of years to teach me. Something moved through Cole's face, old shame surfacing after long submersion, not arriving as accusation, but as consequence, the full weight of it finally arriving where it had always been heading. Arthur Mitchell will have everything I can give him, Cole said. Quietly, deliberately, a promise rather than a performance. I mean that. Chloe nodded. She didn't trust her voice. That was when Declan O'Sullivan appeared at the edge of the curtain. Cole saw him first. His face locked down the automatic professional mask. Declan looked at Cole, then at Silvio, then at Chloe with an expression that had moved completely past social performance into something operational. Franklin, Declan said, table's been called. 3 seconds, the 3 most loaded seconds of the evening. Cole looked at Declan, then at Chloe. He straightened his jacket, the one with the folded report inside, and said, of course, Miss. He turned to Chloe and extended his hand with the formal pleasantness of strangers at a party. Lovely to meet you. She shook it. His grip was completely steady. He walked back to the table with Declan at his side. She watched them go and did not breathe until they sat down. He has it, she said. He has it, Silvio said. Declan saw us talking. Does he know what we gave him? He suspects. He doesn't know. He checked his watch. The transaction is in 42 minutes. They'll move the Raphael early. They'll accelerate. Can Cole stop it before midnight? One call to the right number gets federal agents here in 20 minutes. He paused, but he has to make it. The uncertainty in that sat between them with real weight. She'd done everything she could do. The push had been made, the document delivered the moment given. Cole was Cole's now. She looked across the room, saw Marco watching not at her directly, but angled so she was in his peripheral vision. Saw Declan lean in to say something to him. Saw Marco's expression shift just slightly, just enough. He's going to move against us, she said, with or without the transaction. Because of Voss. Yes, Silvio said, he knows you know. He figured it out 6 weeks ago. Something in how I spoke about Voss changed. He's been waiting to see what I would do. His voice was flat. He had already finished feeling what this cost him, and what was left was the clean, simple fact of it. Bringing you here told him I'd found the evidence, which told him I'd chosen a side. You and Marco were already out of road, she said. Tonight just named it. She looked at him. Really looked the way she looked at things that mattered, not at the surface, which was composed and controlled, and gave away almost nothing but at what was underneath it. The exhaustion of 8 years. The specific grief of a man who had watched his brother become unrecognizable and had kept showing up anyway because that was what you did with family until the moment you absolutely couldn't anymore. I'm sorry, she said. He looked at her. Genuinely surprised. She was starting to understand that genuine surprise was rare for him, which made it something worth noting. For what? For your brother, she said. Just that. Something moved through his face. Brief, unguarded reel, the fractional opening of a door he kept carefully closed. Then it was gone. Across the room, Marco Giardoni raised his champagne glass and caught his brother's eye. The smile he gave Silvio was the smile of a man who had already decided what the evening was going to cost. Silvio did not smile back. Marco's smile stayed exactly where he'd placed it. Measured, patient, the smile of a man who had decided the evening was already won. Silvio turned from it with the deliberate economy of someone closing a door he'd been standing at for too long. The painting, he said, the original. We need to move it now. Chloe understood immediately. Luca. If Marco gets to the safe house before Luca, he stopped, ran the math. The ledger is the anchor. Without the physical document, Cole's investigation gets challenged in 6 months. Good defense lawyers dismantle authentication reports on their own. The original is irreplaceable. Who knows where the safe house is? Petra. He said it without expression. Just the name with the full weight of what it meant. And Luca. Luca, do you trust him? 11 years, he said, no hesitation. I trusted Petra for 7. A pause. Those are different answers. You can't leave the room to reach him. Marco is watching every exit. I know. His eyes moved over the room. The geometry of it, Marco, Declan, the O'Sullivan men, the sightlines. If I move toward the exits right now, he accelerates whatever he's planning. She had it before he finished the sentence. I go. He looked at her. I'm nobody to them right now, she said. Marco thinks I scared easily. Declan thinks I'm a civilian who got lucky. If I walk toward the restrooms and take a wrong turn, Silvio reached into his jacket. He produced a small folded paper and address in his precise handwriting and closed it into her palm without making the transfer visible. Service corridor past the coat check, second door on the left. Luca is on level 2. Give him this. Tell him to go and secure the painting and take it to the secondary. He'll know what that means. What's the secondary? He knows you don't need to. He met her eyes. If anyone stops you, wrong turn looking for the ladies' room, she said. I know. She walked. Not fast, the measured, unhurried pace of someone who belonged exactly where she was walking. Past tables of people watching a wedding happen around them without any idea of the architecture underneath it. Past the coat check. Through the second door. The parking structure was cold and concrete, and she dropped the performance the moment the door closed behind her. She took the stairs to level 2 at a pace that wasn't casual at all. Luca was beside the car when she came through. His hand went to his jacket before she'd taken 2 steps. She stopped. Silvio sent me, she said, a beat. His hand came out empty. He read the paper in the time it took her to breathe twice. His face didn't change, but his posture did the shift of someone receiving confirmation of something they'd been prepared for. "How much time?" he said. 30 minutes, maybe 20. Marco knows something is happening. Luca reached into the car and handed her a burner phone charged, single contact loaded. "Tell him I'm moving." He was already walking. "If you need to reach me, press call. One ring." He was through the far stairwell door before she could respond. She stood alone on level 2 with a burner phone and the distant muffled sound of a wedding reception proceeding without knowledge of its own center. She let herself have 5 seconds. 5 seconds of acknowledging that 36 hours ago she had been in her lab with her gloves on and her lamp set, and her only problem was humidity control in the 3rd floor storage. 5 seconds of feeling the full weight of being here, of everything she'd stepped into, of the extraordinary and terrifying sequence of events that had led from a paintbrush and a cotton swab to a parking garage at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. Then she went back inside. "He's moving," she said, sliding the burner to Silvio as she took her place beside him. "The original will be secured before midnight." He closed his hand around the phone. "Good." He checked his watch. 38 minutes. "Cole?" Still at his table. He found Cole with his eyes. "He'll wait until he's out of the building." "That's too late if they move the Raphael early." "I know." Across the room, 2 O'Sullivan men were moving toward the east wall. The Raphael was being repositioned. The transaction was accelerating. Declan had made his call. "We can't let them close that room," Chloe said. "No, which means we go in." Silvio looked at her. "The private room, with the O'Sullivan financial team and whoever else is in there." "We go in and we stall," she said. "Every minute that door stays open is a minute Cole has to make his call. And every minute we're visible and alive in that room is a minute Marco can't move against us without making it a public event." "This works if Marco's vanity is stronger than his anger," Silvio said. "You said you had 45 years of data." "I did say that." "Then let's test it," she said. They moved toward the private room with the unhurried certainty of people who belonged exactly where they were going. One of the O'Sullivan men positioned at the door straightened at their approach. Silvio looked at him. "It's my brother's wedding," he said simply, and walked through. The private room held a financial intermediary in his 60s, a woman in a charcoal suit with a tablet. 2 O'Sullivan men she didn't recognize, and Declan O'Sullivan, who was already there, which was impossible, which meant there was a second entrance through a back corridor, which meant someone had warned him they were coming. The room went very still. "Silvio," Declan said without surprise. "I wondered how long." "You're moving the timeline," Silvio said. "We're protecting the asset." His eyes moved to Chloe with something past hostility, impersonal, operational, the look of someone solving a logistical problem. "Dr. Mitchell, busy evening." "The painting is a forgery," Chloe said. Every head in the room turned. She hadn't planned to say it that way, flat direct into the center of the room. She'd planned to be careful and managed and strategic. But she looked at the Raphael on its display stand, and she thought about Edmund Voss running out of time, and about her father getting up every morning in a room that wasn't his, and she was done being careful about other people's comfort. "The Raphael is a forgery," she said again. "I have 15 years of experience and a signed professional report that says so with my credentials attached. If this transaction closes on that piece as primary collateral, every person in this room is party to a fraud that a federal prosecutor is already holding documentation for." The financial intermediary had gone pale. The woman with the tablet had stopped moving entirely. "You're lying," Declan said. "Test me," Chloe said. "Call your authenticator right now. Ask them specifically about the craquelure formation in the lower left quadrant. Ask them about the ground preparation under UV." She paused. "Or close the transaction tonight and see what a federal subpoena looks like in 18 months. The financial intermediary said, "I need to make a call." "You're not?" Declan started. "I absolutely am," the man said with the specific stubbornness of someone whose professional liability had just become visible and personal. "If there is a credible authentication dispute on the primary asset, there is a signed assessment from a credentialed expert," Silvio said. "That is the legal definition of a dispute." The door opened. Marco, champagne glass, wedding suit. The expression of a man who had been running through scenarios in his head since Chloe walked through the main entrance and had now arrived at the one he'd chosen. He took 3 seconds to read the room. His composure did not move by a fraction. "Everyone out," he said quietly. The financial intermediary left. The woman with the tablet left. The two O'Sullivan men looked at Declan. "Go," Declan said. They went. Declan stayed. 4 people, Marco, Silvio, Declan, Chloe, and between them everything that the evening had been building toward. Marco set his glass down on the table with a small, precise click. He looked at his brother. "What exactly do you think is going to happen tonight, Silvio?" "What needs to happen?" Silvio said. "You walked into my wedding with this woman and destroyed a transaction 8 years in development." His voice was genuinely curious. Not angry, curious, which was colder. "Help me understand the thinking." "Edmund Voss," Silvio said. Silence. Marco's composure moved then. Just at the edges, the paint lifting from a corner, the first sign of what was underneath. "That's old business." "It's the only business," Silvio said. "He was my friend. He was building something that would have protected both families. You had him killed because you were afraid of what he knew about your back arrangement with the O'Sullivans." Flat, clear, the voice of someone who had rehearsed saying a thing for years and was finally saying it. He hid the evidence because he knew it was coming. The evidence found its way here because he was smarter than you. Marco looked at Declan, quick, assessing. Declan's face returned nothing. "You don't have proof of that," Marco said. "I have the ledger," Silvio said. "I have a signed authentication report. I have an assistant U.S. attorney sitting 40 feet from here holding copies of both." A pause. "And I have you in this room confirming what I just said by not denying it." He looked at his brother. "Deny it. Tell me I'm wrong." The longest silence of the evening, Marco did not deny it. "This ends the family," Marco said. "You know that. Not just the O'Sullivans. Everything Father built." "Father didn't build murder into it," Silvio said. "That was you." A sound from Declan Sharp involuntary quickly swallowed. He hadn't known Silvio knew. His position was recalculating in real time. "You're not walking out of this building," Marco said. "Not with what you have." "Arrest them here," Declan said. "Right now. We manage the legal." "In front of 60 witnesses," Chloe said. "At your own wedding with a federal prosecutor in the building holding the documentation." She looked at Marco directly. "The moment you put a hand on either of us here tonight becomes the event of the century, and Cole has everything he needs to make the call he's already been composing for the last 40 minutes. You said it yourself, you don't want to end the family name." She held his gaze. "So do this publicly. Let's see exactly how fast it ends." Marco stared at her. She didn't look away. She had been practicing not looking away her entire adult life. "You're very calm," he said. "I restore things for a living," she said. "I've learned to be patient." The recognition in his face was the cleanest thing she'd seen from him all evening. Not admiration, but the acknowledgement of an opponent who had not performed according to expectation. He looked at his brother. "This isn't over," he said. "No," Silvio said. "It isn't." Marco picked up his champagne glass. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at Chloe one final time, the look of a man cataloging a loss with the precision of someone who planned to return to it, and walked out. Declan stood a moment longer. She watched the uncertainty move through him, real uncertainty, the kind that meant the foundation had changed. He left without speaking. The room settled into quiet. Chloe and Silvio stood in it together. Her heart was doing something loud that she chose to ignore. Silvio was looking at the Raphael with an expression she hadn't seen from him before. Tired. Just genuinely, completely tired. Silvio's burner buzzed. He handed it to her. "Are you still in the building?" she asked Cole. "Parking level 1, Cole said. "I've been out here 8 minutes." A pause. "I already made the call." She closed her eyes. "When?" "While Declan was walking toward your position." His voice was steady now, the steadiness of a man who had finally pointed himself in the right direction and was moving. "I needed to know you were going to be okay before I left the room. I should have done it sooner." "How long?" she said. 12 minutes, maybe 10. A pause. "Tell Giardoni to keep the Raphael in that room. Don't let anyone move it." She handed the phone back to Silvio. He checked the burner for Luca's message. Nodded once. "Original is secured." The ledger was safe. The report was with Cole. The transaction had collapsed. Breeze, Declan, Marco, all of it was in motion, the machinery of consequence, beginning to move with the slow, unstoppable weight of things held back too long. Chloe sat on the edge of the table. Her legs had decided they were finished performing. She pressed her hands flat against the surface and let herself breathe. Silvio was still standing. He was looking at the door his brother had walked out of. She let him look. Some things needed the full duration of the moment to land. After a while, he turned to her. "You should have run," he said, not criticism. Something else entirely. "I know," she said. "Most people would have. Most people don't have a father in Stateville." He looked at her in the direct, complete way that was just how he looked at things that mattered to him. No performance, no management, nothing between what he saw and what he showed. "I didn't know," he said, "that you'd hold that room the way you held it." "I just told the truth," she said. "A lot of people know the truth and choose not to say it in rooms like that one." "My father said it in a room like that one," she said. "It cost him 11 years. I decided a long time ago that if I ever got the chance to say it over him, I would say it exactly as loud as it needed to be said." From beyond the doors, through the music and the noise of a reception proceeding in ignorance of its own consequences, she heard at the service entrance opening, boots on a hard floor, radio static, the specific vocabulary of people arriving with authority and no interest in being quiet about it. 10 minutes. Cole had said 10. He'd been right. The sound grew before the room understood what it was. Chloe heard the layers of it: service entrance first, then the north stairwell, then voices clipped and professional and specific in the way that federal arrivals were specific. Not chaos. Precision. The sound of something that had been decided before anyone in the main room knew the conversation was happening. "4 through the service corridor," Silvio said from the doorway, looking through the 2-inch gap. "At least 2 more from the lobby level." "Is that bad?" she asked. "It means Cole called more than one number," he said. "It means it's thorough." He closed the door and then looked at her. "Stay in this room until someone with a federal badge opens that door. Not Marco's people, not Declan's people. And you. I need to find Marco." She stood up. "That is not. He is still my brother." He said it quietly, finally, with the force of something he had already fully accepted. "Whatever he did, he is still my brother, and I will not let him find out his life is over from a federal agent in a hallway at his own wedding reception." She looked at him. She thought about her father, about Arthur Mitchell, sitting in a courtroom, while people who had made decisions about loyalty and power decided his fate in the margins of their own story. She thought about what it meant to believe that family still obligated you to something, even when family had become the thing undoing you. She didn't agree, but she understood. 10 minutes, she said. "Stay in the room." 10 minutes, she said again. "After that, I'm coming out." He left. She was alone with the Raphael in the silence and the muffled sound of a world dismantling itself on the other side of a closed door. She sat on the table side and held her own hands and waited, and worked very hard not to think about everything that could break in the next 10 minutes. She made it to 6 before the door opened. Not Silvio, not a federal agent. Declan O'Sullivan came through fast and closed the door behind him, and the controlled man she'd been managing all evening was gone. What stood in his place was pure operational urgency, a man in the final window before everything locked around him. "Where is it?" he said. Chloe stood. "Where is what?" "The original, the ledger. Giardoni moved it." "Where did he send it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "You were good all evening," Declan said, moving toward her. She stepped back and put the display stand between them. "You're not good right now." He was right. She could feel it, the specific failure of performance that happened when you were genuinely frightened and physically alone with someone who wasn't. She pressed her left earring twice. Declan saw it. His eyes moved to her ear, and he understood immediately. "That just brings someone from the parking structure," he said. 4 minutes, maybe less. He moved around the stand. "So let's skip the part where you keep pretending." Chloe did not step back again. She was done stepping back. She had been stepping back from the full reality of what had happened to her father for 11 years, not in defeat, but in the careful way of someone who had decided that patience was the weapon and waiting was the work. She had been patient. She had waited. And tonight she had said the truth in a room full of people who didn't want to hear it, and the truth had not broken, and neither had she. "The ledger is in federal custody," she said. "Luca delivered it 40 minutes ago. Chain of custody logged and documented. There is nothing left for you to take." Declan stopped. The forged Raphael hung between them like punctuation. "My father," Chloe said, "Arthur Mitchell. You are going to say his name in a federal interview room. You are going to tell the truth about 2013, because that is the only version of the next 2 years where you have any negotiating position whatsoever. She paused. You know that. You've known it since Cole walked out of this room with that report in his jacket. Declan stared at her. His jaw worked once. The calculation moving in his face, not capitulation, but the thing just before it when a man stops calculating how to win and starts calculating how much losing will cost him. The door opened. 2 federal agents, badges out, corridor already secured behind them. And Franklin Cole, who looked at Chloe with an expression of complicated, profound relief. Dr. Mitchell, Cole said, are you all right? Yes, she said. One agent moved toward Declan. Declan did not resist. He had already done the math Chloe had just described to him and arrived at the same answer: survival over pride, cooperation over collapse. Cole looked at the Raphael. It stays in this room. I know, she said. I'll write the chain of custody notes for your evidence team. Cole almost smiled. Of course you will. She walked out of the private room into the main reception, which had the strange suspended quality of a space being reorganized by authority guests at their tables with the frozen posture of people told to stay seated by someone whose tone made clear this was not optional. Agents at the perimeter, the careful, inevitable machinery of consequence, doing what it did when it finally arrived. She looked for Silvio, found him on the far side of the room near the head table, standing with his hands at his sides and his face composed, and Marco Giardoni sitting in his wedding chair, not standing, not moving, just sitting with his bride beside him, who had the look of someone whose entire understanding of her life had been replaced without her consent. Marco was looking at his brother with an expression Chloe would think about for a long time. Not hatred, not betrayal, something older and sadder than either, the expression of a man who had always known, somewhere unacknowledged, that the choices he'd made led here, and had made them anyway. An agent approached Marco, said something Chloe couldn't hear. Marco stood. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at his wife and said one sentence quietly, privately, the last private thing the room would allow him, and the woman pressed her hand over her mouth and turned away. Marco walked with the agent toward the exit. He passed Silvio. He stopped. 2 brothers face to face. The room kept moving around them. Agents, guests, the whole grinding machinery of consequence, and for 3 seconds nothing else existed in that space except the full weight of everything. 2 people who had grown up in the same house and become different people had just finished costing each other. Marco said something, too far for Chloe to hear. She watched Silvio's throat move, once controlled, holding something large and careful. Then Marco walked on. Silvio stood where he was and watched the door close behind his brother, and Chloe crossed the room and stood beside him and said nothing. Some things needed to be what they were: broken, irreversible, real. You didn't try to restore those. You just bore witness. After 30 seconds, Silvio turned from the door. What did he say? She asked. He said he was sorry about Voss. She absorbed that. Do you believe him? I believe he meant it the way people mean things when it's too late to change them. His voice had the flat quality of something that had finished hurting and arrived at acceptance. Marco was never a simple man. Cole appeared at her shoulder. Formal statement tonight, Dr. Mitchell. And the original document as soon as Luca can get it to a secure location. He looked at Silvio with an expression that was complicated but not hostile, the expression of a man navigating new terrain with his eyes open. We'll need to discuss the scope of the investigation, Mr. Giardoni. The Giardoni family's operations are not outside that scope. I understand, Silvio said. 9 o'clock tomorrow. Both of you. Cole held out a card. Silvio took it. Cole looked at Chloe one last time and she saw the shame again. Old quiet working itself towards something useful. Mitchell's appeal paperwork starts tonight, he said. I'll do it personally. Chloe's throat tightened. She pressed it back down. Thank you, she said. Cole moved toward the exit. Judge Harlan Breeze, near the east wall where Chloe had last seen him, was standing with an attorney who had appeared with suspicious speed, the specific speed of a man whose clients kept lawyers on standby. It didn't matter. The documents named him. Her father's trial record named him. Cole had everything. Silvio's burner buzzed. Luca. Document secured. Chain of custody established. Cole's people had a copy. It was done. Chloe said, I want to go. Yes, Silvio said. They walked out through the front entrance past the agent at the door who looked at Silvio and made a professional decision to let them through and into the Chicago night. The city was doing what it always did, moving, breathing, carrying its own enormous, indifferent life. Traffic sounds, a siren to the north, the cold, clean smell of the lake on the wind. Chloe stood on the sidewalk and breathed it in and felt something release in her chest, something she had been holding for so long she had stopped noticing it was there. Luca's replacement car was at the curb. They got in. The city began to move past the windows. Several minutes of silence. Then, where do you want to go? Silvio asked. She thought about her apartment. She thought about the museum where a 19th century portrait was sitting in her lab, with its secrets finally spent, its long work finished. She thought about a man 40 miles southwest of the city who had been right about everything for 11 years. I need to write a letter, she said. He looked at her. To my father. Letters are the only way he gets news. I need him to hear this from me before he hears it from anyone else. She looked at her hands steadier than she expected. I need him to know tonight. Silvio reached into his jacket and produced a small notepad and a pen. She stared at them. I carry them, he said. Old habit. She took them. The pen moved without resistance. She opened the notepad to the first page and thought about what you said to a man you'd been visiting in a room that smelled like institutional disinfectant for 11 years, a man who had been right and punished for it and had stayed whole anyway. Dad, she wrote. She stopped. Let her hand be what it was, not entirely steady. I found it. I found the ledger. Everything you told me is documented, verified, and as of tonight, it's in federal hands with a prosecutor who has committed personally to your appeal. The signatures on the transfer authorizations were forged. Breeze took money. It's all on record. It's out, and it is real, and it is not going away this time. She stopped. Started to write, I'm sorry it took so long, crossed it out. Her father had told her 3 years ago. Sunday, his glasses pushed up on his forehead, his voice steadier than it had any right to be. You don't owe me your life, Chloe. You owe me a good one, that's all. She started again. I'm not sorry it took this long. You taught me to look carefully, to trust what I find, and to be patient. That's exactly what I did. That's all I did. Come home soon. She folded the page, held it. Stateville is 40 miles, she said. It's past midnight, Silvio said. Visiting hours open at 8. She looked at the letter. I want to be at the gate when they open. I want to hand it to him myself. The car changed direction without Silvio saying a word to the driver. She noticed that, the quiet efficiency of a decision being made and executed without performance. You'll have to wait, she said. I've been waiting 8 years, he said. A few more hours is nothing. They drove south. The city thinned and spread and the highway opened, and Chicago fell away behind them, its lights making their argument against the dark the way they always did. Chloe leaned her head back and held the letter and let herself, for the first time in 36 hours, stop managing the next 10 minutes and simply be inside the one she was living. She thought about restoration. What it actually was, not the popular version, the romantic idea of returning damaged things to their former glory. The real version, the honest version. You never got it all the way back. There was always loss. There was always a version of the thing that had existed before damage was done that you could not fully recover, no matter how skilled you were, no matter how patient, no matter how many years you'd spent training your eye to see what others missed. But you got close. If you were careful and honest and you did not look away from what was actually there, you got close enough that the thing could live in the world again. Close enough that people could stand in front of it and understand what it had been, what it had survived, and why it mattered that someone had bothered to tell the truth about it. That was always enough. It had always been enough. Silvio, she said. Yes. What Marco said, the second part. She watched his profile in the dark. He said he was sorry about Voss, and then something else. I saw your face. He was quiet long enough that she thought it was the kind of question he was going to file away. Then he said that out of everyone he'd expected to come at him, he never expected it to be me. His jaw moved once. He said he should have. She heard the whole weight of it, the pride, the grief, the specific and particular pain of being known completely by someone who chose to hurt you anyway, and the strange, terrible intimacy of that. He was right, she said quietly. He should have. Something in Silvio's face shifted. The almost expression, the fractional opening she'd been learning to catch all evening. He looked at her and she looked back, and neither of them said anything else for a while because some things were more real in silence than they were in language. The highway stretched ahead of them, dark and long and open. Somewhere 40 miles south, Arthur Mitchell was awake or not awake, in a room that wasn't his, not knowing that his daughter was in a car moving through the dark toward him with the truth folded in her hands. Not knowing that an attorney named Edmund Voss had hidden that truth inside a painting 11 years ago because he was running out of time and believed the world was worth the effort of keeping the record straight. Not knowing that a man he'd never met had spent 8 years in patient, careful grief building the case that would finally bring him home. He would know in the morning. 8 o'clock. The gate opening and Chloe Mitchell walking through it, not hoping for grace, not asking for a favorable reading, not navigating around a system that had already failed once, just handing over a fact, clearly completely without apology, the way her father had taught her to do things when she was small, and the world was still simple, and truth seemed like the kind of thing that took care of itself. Truth did not take care of itself. She knew that now. Someone had to carry it through every door. It was not welcome in every room that tried to extinguish it across every year. It spent buried under 2 centuries of varnish and fear and the willful blindness of people who had found it more convenient not to look. Someone had to do the work. Arthur Mitchell had told the truth in a room that punished him for it, and he had not broken. His daughter had found the truth in a painting no one thought was worth looking at, and she had carried it through fire, and she had not let go. That was not a small thing. That was not luck or coincidence or the machinery of fate working itself out on its own schedule. That was a choice, made in a laundromat doorway with a rolled canvas under her arm and a phone ringing from an unknown number, and every reason in the world to drop everything and run in the opposite direction. She had answered the phone. She had walked into the garage. She had looked at the painting. She had told the truth in a room full of people whose entire power rested on the truth not being told. The car moved through the dark. The letter was warm in her hands. The highway ahead was long and straight and clear. And Arthur Mitchell's daughter was going home to give her father back the one thing 11 years of someone else's crime had taken from him, not his freedom, which was coming, but the simple, unbearable relief of being believed. She had always believed him. Now the world would too.